about, where crypto is today, and I think even more so where FTX is, we're one of the newest crypto platforms, certainly the newest of the large ones. We're really proud of what we built, and I think there's a lot of exciting things going on in crypto. And despite all the adoption that we've seen for the ecosystem over the last few years, it still is touching a pretty small fraction of the world. When you put it into context, a pretty small fraction of transactions are happening through crypto, a pretty small fraction of, people transact with crypto in any ways. And so I think a lot of what we've been thinking is like, what are ways that we can take what we see as an exciting, growing set of products and industry and sort of introduce them to tens of millions of people in a way which doesn't dilute the brand, but instead sort of strengthens and underscores it. We've been working with Tom Brady, we've been working with Steph Curry, with Major League Baseball, with TSM and others. And I think that a lot of what we're looking at there is how do we get tens of millions of people engaged with the cryptocurrency ecosystem? And, we could buy tens of millions of Facebook ads, and I don't know, maybe we should. At some point, we'll hire a team to look into to whether that is worth doing. But that's not a thing which is going to really make the same sort of impact on people. Anyone can sort of, potentially do that. And instead, what we've really been looking for, like, who are partners that we're really excited about and are really excited about us, and, who can help represent us and who we can really work with in a way to build something kind of stronger and more powerful than what we had. And I think I'll let him talk about it more, but we've been working, with Kevin as well on this, which, really excited about. And sort of on another matter, I've been working with Jeremy and Tully on the product side a lot, which has been super exciting too. We started looking at DeFi a year ago, well, I guess a year and a half ago now. And what became clear really quickly was that, first of all, there were some really cool things going on in DeFi. And I think just to illustrate part of that, if you have a DeFi protocol, right, which basically it's a company or a program or, some protocol, some sort of system, which is built entirely into a blockchain. It's all transparent. It's 100% transparent. It's 100% predictable what will happen given how people interface with it. And that means that if a third party comes and wants to integrate that protocol, they can. And you can get potentially this sort of exponential explosion of creativity and innovation because all of these different parts can be composable into each other. If you build a borrow lending protocol, then any other protocol on that blockchain can integrate it natively in, which just doesn't work in centralized finance in the same way. And so it was really cool. There's a ton of hype around it. And it also absolutely sucked to use. Like, it was unbelievably bad. And for those who haven't used DeFi, and a lot of those who have, it's worth just running side by side a DeFi protocol and a centralized one, just reminding yourself of how painful it sometimes is. And the reason is it was taking 5 minutes to finalize a transaction because the blockchain was completely overwhelmed. It cost $50 to click a button because you had to outbid everyone else trying to get their transactions in. And what became clear really quickly was that scaling, the sort of problem of scaling a blockchain, wasn't one of the 17 constraints on a blockchain. It was the single blocker to mass adoption. You cannot have 1 billion people using a chain that has 10 transactions per second. It just doesn't work. Like, there's no two ways around it. That math doesn't work. And in order to take these programs and scale them to masses, or even scale them to a single large enterprise, you needed to get into tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of transactions per second. Just take your favorite big enterprise, right? Whether it's a protocol, a company, a messaging protocol, whatever. It's going to have 1 million transactions a second. That's sort of like what it means to have 1 billion users. And you needed a blockchain that could keep up with that. So we just sort of had phone calls with a lot of blockchains. And I don't know, our call with Solana was very different than our calls with other blockchains. Like, sort of, one of the first things that Anatoly said was like, hey, we've been thinking about, like, how many transactions do we need to do? things. Like, we want to get wherever we need to get, and like, here's where we are now, and here's a place you can go test it out. And so anyway, what we've I think gotten really excited about is a lot of the applications that are being built on Solana. And I think it's one of the few places in DeFi right now where you can see it scaling to 1 billion users. And it's not there right now. It probably has another factor of 50 to go or something. But that's a lot better than a factor of 50,000. And like Tully said, one of the founding sort of principles of Solana is that it gets better over time, that it gets better with Moore's law, that it has an ambition to be able to service billions of users with millions of transactions per second. And we just see that sort of the holy grail of what DeFi could become. And so we've helped, people build out DEXs on the Solana blockchain, Serum being one of them. I've sort of invested in a number of projects on the Solana blockchain in the Serum ecosystem. We've worked a lot with Jeremy, who, Circle has added Solana support for USDC, its stablecoin, which now all of a sudden you have sort of a massively scalable, stable object that can act as a pricing reference and pricing currency for transactions happening and for payments happening on Solana. And again, you go to a payment company and you're like, hey, can you try to integrate crypto? And they're like, great, we have 17,000 payments per second in this subclass that we'd like to test out on your network. How does that sound? And your answer would be like, yeah, we can make that work, rather than like, can we try 17 without the 1,000? And that's really where it all came from. Nothing is there yet. No DeFi protocols are at the level where, centralized protocols have to be quaking in their boots because they're going to be overtaken tomorrow. But that's not the goal. The goal is moving, making progress, and building the fundamentals and the infrastructure of something that could get there, that could get to a point where real large systems decide that it is the correct decision for their business to build on a blockchain. And I think optimistically we're, a year or two away from getting real adoption there, if the industry kind of builds its products right, plays its cards right. And I'm really excited about sort of that progress. I've was in the Bay Area till 2018, and then spent a bunch of time in Hong Kong. And a lot of the context there are a number of pieces of it. One of which is that crypto is really a global business, and there is a U.S. economy there. There's an Eastern economy. There's a European economy. There's an African economy. And especially, I think, coming from a Western background, it was really important to be able to meet a lot of people in person, to form those connections and those relationships, to build up a multicultural team that could help understand where different users are coming from. And I think you see really different demands and use cases from different parts of the world. I think especially, if you have less trust of banks in a country, you're going to start to see a lot of demand for an alternative way to store your assets. And I think that creates very different dynamics in different places. We've recently been building out our offices in a number of places, in Bahamas, Gibraltar, and we also have a U.S. operation, which is at this point biggest offices in Chicago. I've been flying between them because helping to foster the international exchange, helping to foster the U.S. exchange. We've hired a really great leadership team there with Brett and Ryan and others in Chicago. I've been kind of a little more stuck than I wanted to be recently because of quarantine and COVID. As the world hopefully opens up, I have to be mobile one way or another. We're frankly trying to decide where the right places are to have the bulk of our workforce. And I think that the factors that are going into that basically are a combination of who's taking the lead on crypto regulation, who's taking the lead on licensing. We have, licenses in a number of jurisdictions, and we're applying for licenses in a number of other jurisdictions. And I think getting to your question here, that's a really important piece of this, is right now, many regulators are looking hard at crypto. And I think some of them are taking the lead on building out regulatory frameworks. Some examples that obviously the MAS in Singapore. We've, been in discussion in Singapore, been working on licensing. We don't have one, but we have started that process. We've been in the United States, recently acquired a futures exchange license through LedgerX, which we're really excited about. Really excited about the paradigm the CFTC has, I think, built for a while there, and I think it's been sort of living a little bit below radar. But I think that could be a huge piece of the industry going forward, because it allows for futures and derivatives, and frankly, a lot of other contracts. And you look at what Kalshi has built on top of LedgerX through the CFTC regime, with event contracts. We're really excited about that. And there are a number of other regulators who are sort of popping on the map. And so I think basically, the biggest things we're looking at internationally are where is their licensing? And I think especially there are a lot of countries that have started the licensing process, but haven't yet built licenses that can accommodate futures or derivatives, that haven't built licenses that can accommodate a lot of the types of products that frankly are the bulk of volume in every asset class. And then frankly, honestly, quarantine. It's really important to us to be able to get employees into an jurisdiction. This is not something we were thinking about 3 years ago. When we were choosing office locations, it's now like our number 2 criteria. Can we get people physically into the country? If we can, it's hard to hire, it's hard to grow. And I think that that's becoming like one of our top criteria for where we're going to be building out offices and where people are going to be moving. And frankly, that's changing on a monthly basis. It's pretty frustrating not to have sort of long-term clarity on that. But those are sort of the factors I think going forward. And I'm going to be help building out our regulated offices in, probably 4 or 5 jurisdictions over the next year. I mean, I think there's a lot of work that has to be done before that decision can even be made. I think that right now, DeFi isn't quite ready. I'm optimistic it will be in the next couple of years. Once it does, I think you're going to see some companies decide that they are best off working with decentralized ledgers. I think we've already started to see those. I mean, you've seen Visa, as an example, really embrace blockchain technology in a large number of ways. And they've, seem to have made the decision that they want to try to find a way to work with, I think, emerging technologies and grow stronger from it. I'm guessing you're going to see a number of companies make those statements. I'm guessing you're going to see a number of companies not make those statements. And I think that's going to be a tacit way of saying maybe they're not going to be actively fighting against crypto, but they're not planning to work with DeFi. They're not planning to work with blockchain. And, they're going to be sort of trying to hold their turf there. I think you're just going to see a split depending, frankly, on kind of gut calls from the leadership of a lot of different companies, with some going in one way, some going in another way. It's going to be messy. I think the downside is the industry can't find its footing. But I think in the upside case, which I'm sort of optimistic we'll be able to reach, I don't know, 25% of activity could be on blockchains. I don't think 100% will be. I don't think a bagel really will be, because you can't eat a blockchain or a blocker. But, when you tweet, I think that tweet could be natively on a blockchain. When you pay for something, that payment can go through blockchain rails. When you invest, that can go through blockchain rails. Huge swaths of industry can be rebuilt in open, composable, efficient ways on blockchain technology. And I think it could really lead to a Cambrian explosion of innovation if it's sort of done right, and if it's done in a compliant way, and if the industry can work with regulators to make that happen.